Hi there, everybody. I'm Gia Milano, and I grew up in a calm area of Virginia with long rows of homes and tree lined streets. Spent the majority of my childhood with my parents. My mother was a kind person who never stopped smiling at me as she made breakfast in the tiny kitchen until nightfall. My father was a man of few words, but great responsibility who worked hard to provide for our family. We lived in a modest but loving home, and everything in my memory was ideal. At least I believed so. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel so I can keep sharing more amazing, genuine tales with you like this one. And be sure to watch the entire video because it's going to be a really intriguing tale. However, my world abruptly fell apart when I was just 15 years old. After a brief and sudden illness, my mother passed away so abruptly that I was unable to comprehend what was going on. The sense of emptiness increased as I saw my father grow lonely in a home that used to be filled with laughter. Although we still lived together, we were no longer the same family. Every morning, I went to school, and the kitchen and simple meals were the same when I got home. But my mother was gone. Each meal only had two people, but the gap between my father and me felt wider than the house. When I turned 18, my father remarried, which was shocking, even though I knew in my heart that he deserved to be happy with his new wife once more. My stepmother was a nice and gentle woman who brought her son, Mike, who was a year younger than me. At first, it felt like my life had been completely upended and that I was no longer living the calm life I had known. I also felt uncomfortable. Attempting to get along with my new younger brother was silent and, like me, was attempting to adjust to our new circumstances, even though he had never done anything to upset me. In the evenings, the entire family would congregate in the living room where my dad and stepmother would sit and discuss business or future plans, while Mike and I would exchange bewildered looks that caused me to lower my head in reaction. Mike frequently helped me with food, which was a small gesture that felt significant. He was always quiet and didn't talk much, but occasionally his glances lingered a little too long, and I wondered if I was being overly sensitive or if it was just a younger brother's affection for his new, older sister. However, there was an unavoidable tension that neither of us talked about feelings that should have remained strictly sisterly, but had instead grown more complex. Throughout the day, there were times when I felt my heart race at his closeness, and I hated that feeling and the fact that one night I had begun to see him as more than just a brother. I heard faint footsteps in the hallway. Mike entered my room as usual, and we had quick chats before he went back to his own place. But this time, he stayed longer than usual, looking into my eyes as though he wanted to say something I wasn't sure how to answer. The atmosphere between us felt heavy and charged, and the silence dragged on. Before I could consider it, I nodded and asked him to stay a little while longer. We sat in the dark with strangers who were strangely close, and to be honest, I liked Mike a lot. He was attractive in a way that attracted my attention, and occasionally I wondered if I should feel bad because he was my brother by name. But the rational reasoning overcame those feelings. That came with sharing a roof. My father and stepmother occupied the first floor, while we slept in separate but closed-off rooms on the second story. This arrangement occasionally resulted in unpleasant situations. I was a freshman in college, and he was a senior in high school, busy studying for tests. We were both getting used to our new routines, but there was a noticeable tension between us on calm evenings after school when we would sit down to talk. I realized that I truly liked him beyond familial fondness as we sat on the living room sofa, the TV's warmth illuminating our silence as we fought to find words. Our feelings were unclear and different from those of siblings. It was a calm evening like any other until I realized it wouldn't end the same way. My parents had left for a 5-day trip, leaving Mike and me alone at home, and at first we thought it would be a simple get together. But I couldn't deny that my heart raced whenever I saw Mike. Opportunity to unwind without parental supervision. After a busy week, we ended up in the living room that evening, watching a romantic film that neither of us enjoyed, just to pass the time. I had made some snacks, like dried squid and a few cans of Sodatown Wind. The film started off harmlessly enough, and our lighthearted conversation filled the silence. House. But then an unexpected scene appeared that showed a couple in a passionate embrace. For some reason, we fell silent. The laughter stopped, and the space between us thickened with unsaid words. I could feel Mike's eyes on me, and as I sat there with my soda can to calm my nerves, he suddenly and unexpectedly embraced me. His movements were strong, unexpected, and completely unstoppable. But my body reacted differently. We had crossed the line that separated sibling affection in that moment in the darkness of the quiet room that night, which changed the evening from a typical evening to something completely different. His kisses were intense, as if all the emotions we had repressed for so long had exploded and couldn't resist my heart rate based in turmoil. Important turning moment Mike and I were inseparable that entire night, breaking all boundaries and exchanging a few words. Everything happened instinctively as a result of what had been suppressed for so long. The closeness we once shared faded away and was replaced by emotions we could no longer control. I can still clearly recall how the following morning felt. Soft sunshine that was diffused by the curtains, I lay beside Mike in what should have been my quiet sleeping area. Everything was the same. The room was quiet. The light was warm. But something inside of me had changed forever. We spoke a few words and shared glances that seemed to indicate that we both understood that our lives would never be the same in the days that followed. I allowed myself to forget reality during this time, choosing to ignore the fact that Mike and I were only siblings in name. We lived as a carefree couple, unaware of the world around us, and every night we watched films together, talked, and ended our days in the same bed. My father and stepmother continued their travels, and we made the most of our time together. There was no longer any awkwardness, only a complicated comfort. At this point, meals turned from family get-togethers into intimate, everything went back to normal when my parents came home. Mike and I went back to being siblings, acting as though nothing had happened and that every private moment had only been a passing dream. Continued our covert connection, sneaking moments whenever possible, as Mike and I exchanged knowing looks while they stayed oblivious, grinning and talking about their travels. In the months that followed, we knew that our secret had to stay hidden. Mike would sneak into my room, and we would hold each other as if there had never been a barrier between us during the day. We pretended that everything was normal. Family meals resumed without suspicion, and Mike and I only exchanged brief glances. Those passionate but covert evenings became a routine whenever my parents went to bed early or had to leave. I was breathless from the hidden tension, but I couldn't stop the guilt that was pointed out at me. It wasn't strong enough to make me leave, so I kept living in secret. Every night with Mike became so familiar that I feared I couldn't escape it. So I knew I couldn't let this go on, so I started taking birth control pills covertly to make sure no one would find out. I dreaded the possible repercussions of our. Although I frequently felt nostalgic for our past, the physical separation forced us to pause our relationship. A year later, Mike graduated and moved to a new city for college. And when he left, I knew our relationship would inevitably change, even if I didn't want to admit it. I applied for a job as an office worker at a digital company because I wanted to start over. But the distance made things harder. Was nothing special, but it gave me stability and a break from the emotional chaos I had gone through. That's when he met the man who would forever change my life. He ran a prosperous hair salon in the city and exuded calmness, confidence, and charm from the moment we met. I was amazed by his strength and kindness. He was unlike anyone I had ever met. Every story he told me and every look he gave me a sense of security that I had long desired. And we fell in love quickly. Everything happened organically, as if we were meant to be together. We soon got married and started the family life I had always imagined. Now that we have a child together, life feels more complete than ever. My days with him and our child helped me temporarily forget the painful memories of the past, though they do occasionally resurface during times of weakness. I know I have found a new home and a man deserving of respect and love. But somewhere in my mind, the memories of Mike was a wonderful man who always showed me genuine care and affection. But every time I look into his eyes, I feel a heaviness in my heart, as if I am hiding a part of my past that he deserves to know. I often wondered if I would ever truly forget in those secret days. But now that I have a family to protect, that is what matters most. I struggle with the question of whether I should describe my history with Mike to him. I can't sleep at night because I'm torn between telling him the truth and keeping it a secret forever. I worry that if I tell him, he might never look at me the same way again. And everything we've built together, including the small family I cherish, could fall apart as a result of my admission. But on the other hand, carrying this secret around feels like a burden that weighs me down every day and makes me feel unworthy of his love. Sincerely, I'm at a crossroads and unsure of which way to go. Maybe after hearing my story, you'll condemn me for hurting a lot of people and for my bad choices in the past. But all I can ask is, if you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you choose to tell the truth, even though it might destroy everything? Or would you? I would appreciate any advice, sympathy, or criticism because I am genuinely at a crossroads and unsure of the best course of action. If you were in my position, what would you do? Should I reveal everything and face the consequences? Or should I keep the secret to protect what I have? Choose silence and allow the past to seep deeply into your memory in the hopes that it never comes back to harm those you love.